Hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome to our information session about our planned restoration projects for the BASF site in Toms River, New Jersey. My name is Molly Berman, Communications Manager for BASF, and I will help guide us through tonight's session. In just a few minutes, our team of experts will walk you through each of the restoration projects planned for the site. Please note, today is the first step in our community engagement efforts, and you will have the opportunity to provide input and feedback as we finalize the designs of these projects. We have published a public survey that is now available on our website and hope you join us in person on February 28th at Toms River North High School from 5 to 8 p.m. to discuss these projects in more detail after being introduced to them tonight. We will begin with a welcome from our Vice President of Environmental Health and Safety, followed by a message from the Assistant Commissioner of Community Investment and Economic Revitalization at the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. Then we will set the stage for the transformative work that lies ahead and walk you through these projects. We've made time for Q&A at the end of tonight's session, so please share your questions and feedback throughout. There is a phone number provided on your screen to text your questions and comments to. We hope to get to as many as possible today, and if we cannot get to them all, we will follow up via email to each and every one of you. Lastly, just a few technical considerations before we get started. Please know that your lines will be muted for today's call, and our meeting will be recorded. Both the recording and the slides will be available on our project website after we conclude. Thank you all again for joining, and with this, I will hand it over to Mark Patterson.
Good evening. I'm Mark Patterson, the Vice President of Environmental Health and Safety at BASF, and I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all of you who have joined us tonight for this information session. We're really excited to be at this stage of this transformative project. We are committed to preserving over 1,000 acres of the BASF site in Toms River and creating a thriving ecosystem that benefits both the environment and the Toms River community. Sustainability is at the core of everything that we do at BASF. The ecological restoration projects that we will be presenting this evening exemplify this commitment. Our projects will be designed to enhance biodiversity and aim to positively contribute to conservation efforts and protect the environment for future generations. These natural resource restoration projects underscore our commitment to protecting biodiversity and ecology in Toms River. We also believe in supporting the establishment of educational programming to raise awareness about the importance of our environment. We'll be sharing our preliminary design for an environmental education center that will be a focal point of this park and will allow educators to utilize the space and inspire their students. As we finalize the designs for the projects, your input in this process will be used to improve the outcome, as Molly had mentioned. Opportunities for feedback do not end today. We invite you to join us on February 28th to see the design components in person and to speak with our representatives. For more information and the opportunity to provide additional input, please visit our website, tomsrivernrd.com. Lastly, I'd like to thank the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection for their oversight and expertise during the planning and implementation of this project. And now I'm thrilled and pleased to introduce Assistant Commissioner Elizabeth Dragon from the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection's Office of Community Investment and Economic Revitalization.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Dragon. I am honored to serve as the Assistant Commissioner for the Department of Environmental Protection's Community Investment and Economic Revitalization Program. And within this program, I have the privilege of leading the Office of Natural Resource Restoration, which is responsible for overseeing the settlement signed by BASF to resolve the natural resource damages related to the former Ciba-Geigy site in Toms River. Since the settlement was signed in August, our office has been working diligently to ensure conditions of the settlement are implemented. And today, our purpose in this meeting remains the same. Along with representatives of the Office of Natural Resource Restoration, I am here to ensure compliance with the settlement agreement. One of our key objectives is to ensure that BASF involves you, the community, in the design process and takes your input into consideration as they begin work on the restoration projects. Additionally, we want to ensure that BASF adheres to the guidelines set forth in the settlement, which established the baseline for restorative values and enhancements on the site. Lastly, we are committed to ensuring that the necessary restorative actions take place within a reasonable timeframe by continually overseeing the development that will ultimately provide you with an environment to enjoy. During this evening's virtual information session, as well as the upcoming in-person design event on February 28th, the Office of Natural Resource Restoration will be present to listen to your input and monitor and ensure that BASF is in compliance with our executed settlement agreement. And now I hand it back to Molly Berman.
Thank you, Mark and Elizabeth. I'd like to now introduce Loretta Kwong, Project Manager for our Toms River Restoration Project.
Thank you, Molly. Hello, everyone. Tonight's session holds great significance as we embark on a journey toward the shared goal of restoring, protecting, and enhancing the natural beauty of Toms River. The purpose of today's session is to provide information to you about the work BASF must perform to settle our natural resource damage liabilities. We have an obligation to mitigate damages to natural resources caused by historic activities. In August 2023, BASF reached an agreement with the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, the NJDEP, to settle those liabilities. It's important to understand that the agreement is related to natural resources. If you have any questions on what natural resource damages are, the NJDEP will have additional information on their website. Tonight, we'll provide an overview of the required work to address natural resource damages by sharing our vision for what the site will become. The proposed ecological restoration projects are at the conceptual design stage. We want to acknowledge our common goal here of ensuring the park will be a safe and a beneficial asset to the Toms River community. We also want to hear from you as we finalize the designs. We invite you to provide your input, comments, and suggestions. We'll provide information on how to contact us, provide feedback, and complete the public survey at the end of tonight's session. As part of the settlement agreement, over 1,000 acres of the site will be permanently preserved to support groundwater recharge and preserve the ecological value of the land by protecting it from future development. 375 acres located in the project parcel that you see in yellow and a portion of the retained parcel that you see in gray is the location of our 9 ecological restoration projects that we will walk you through during tonight's session. The public will have access to both the forested, which you see in green, and the project parcel when the park is open. As we shared earlier, we have a common goal to ensure the park will be safe to all visitors. Results of soil samples collected across the forested and project parcels to date indicate that there is no risk to park visitors. Separate from the settlement agreement with the NJDEP, BASF continues to work under the oversight of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the U.S. EPA, for the environmental cleanup efforts at the site. BASF will remain responsible for groundwater cleanup until the U.S. EPA approves shutdown of those systems. Before we dive in, it's important to understand the immense size and scale of the Toms River Park. The site is approximately 1,000 acres. That's equivalent to approximately 769 football fields and twice as large as Liberty State Park. We're truly excited for this opportunity to conserve such a large open space in this community. Next, I'd like to introduce John Bleiler, Project Technical Lead with AECOM, who will provide an overview and vision of the Toms River Park.
Thank you, Loretta. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is John Bleiler. I'm with AECOM. We're a large architectural and engineering company that specializes in large-scale projects of this nature, projects that create opportunity, restore the environment, provide community uplift and ecological uplift. As Loretta discussed, this project is unique. It's unique in terms of its scale, 1,000 acres of ecological restoration, 750 football fields, more than that even, 20% larger than Central Park. It's unique in terms of the habitat value. The site contains some of the largest undisturbed stands of forest in the region. And it's unique in terms of the community uplift that we can provide, the opportunities for passive recreational uses. Over the course of this evening, my colleagues Gonzalo Cruz, a landscape architect, and Nadine Berger, an architect and a sustainability specialist, and I will walk you through our vision of the park. We see opportunities here to create wetland habitat, to create edges, ecotone habitat, wet meadows, dry meadows, to enhance and provide access to the Toms River corridor. We're really excited about this opportunity, and we hope you are too. You know, we really, the notion of providing ecological and social uplift on such a large scale is awesome, but we get it. It's a lot of information. So please ask questions. We want your feedback so that when we regroup later in February, our collective visions are truly captured. Thank you. Gonzalo?
Thank you, John. Thanks for having us tonight. We're really excited to walk you through the vision for Toms River Park. We wanted to start by giving you guys a little bit of regional connectivity. It's important that whatever we do with our site, with the Toms River Park site, it connects to the south, to the north, in every which way direction in where it sits. In particular importance, the relationship between the site and the river is really important. But I guess what I'm trying to say with some of the features that we have in the region, like Pike Lake, the Winding River Park, Riverwood Park, what all of those pieces of public infrastructure have in common is this sort of unified ecology that we would like to bring into Toms River to make it even stronger as it connects to the rest of these parcels.
So for those of you who looked at some of the materials online, including the work plan, you'll have seen that originally we envisioned 9 distinct project areas, numbered areas 1 through 9. That's still the case. However, as the design has evolved, we've really worked hard to integrate these 9 features so they function as one. So we have ecological connectivity. We don't want siloed habitats. So we have human connectivity. So we're currently conducting a variety of studies to really understand the existing condition at the site. And those studies include botanical studies, soil nutrient studies. We recently completed a large-scale flyover to gather topography of the site. So each of these 9 projects is different in terms of how we design it, how we bioengineer the restoration effort. And as such, we'll be using a variety of tools. So what you're going to hear tonight is a little bit of a before and after presentation. For each of these projects, we'll talk a little bit about the existing condition, and then we'll transition into a vision of the future and how we can repair, how we can restore, and at times even replace habitats through passive restoration activities, active restoration activities, and again, even replacement of habitats. As you're going to hear, we have a very exciting wetland creation project that we'd love to share with you.
So that you have a very clear understanding of how we're doing this and what the actual vision for the park is, we wanted to start by showing you an aerial photograph of what the park looks today. And like John mentioned, if we go to the next slide, you know, we have a collection of distinctive projects that provide very specific ecological uplifts and perhaps also a lot of different types of human activity. The vision for Toms River Park creates something that is very well unified and very well connected from area to area along the park. So we would like to think of this whole enterprise as one big, large park instead of just a series of components that make up 9 projects. What threads them together is a series of circulation paths that take form of trail systems in which then a bunch of ecological landscapes are connected within. To make it really easy to follow along, we've basically divided the entire project area into 4 distinct zones. The first being the ecological restoration and learning zone, shown in pink, right in the middle of it. The second, the riverfront ecology, where we actually have an opportunity to engage wherever possible with Tom's River, which brings a really dynamic experience. The third, the woodlands, shown in orange all around, an amazing opportunity to invite users to a forest, a very, very different kind of experience and ecology of landscape than everything else, very immersive. And finally, we have the pollinator meadow zone, currently located around the solar fields, that we would like to tell you a little bit about what's been happening there.
And, you know, as we're going to walk through this evening, when we think of this part of New Jersey, the northern pinelands, we of course think of pine trees, the characteristic pitch pine scrub oaks of the northern pineland. But there are also a variety of other habitats in the pinelands that we want to highlight tonight. Wet meadows, wet habitats along the Toms River corridor, dry meadows, almost savanna-like meadows, as well as, of course, the pine oak upland forests. So tonight, as we look to restore and rewild this large site, as we formulate ecological objectives around this beautiful pineland ecosystem, again, we really would love your input. Please text to the number shown on your screen. Any input that you have that helps us ensure that we formulate ecological objectives, restoration objectives that meet your needs would truly be appreciated. And you know, we want our project to reflect community and stakeholder interest.
So as a way of introduction to each of the zones, each zone has a distinctive set of experiences and landscape types. The first zone, which is the ecological and restoration and learning zone, has 3 big components that we would like to walk you through. The environmental center to the south, which is where a lot of activity and a lot of destination will be brought to the site, to the park. We have a pine and grassland pollinator habitat meandering through between the environmental center and to the north, a series of grasslands, which we've identified a number of moments that we can bring people together to experience such landscape.
And so why don't I start at the southern portion of the property with the environmental center, which, next slide please. Currently in this area, there's a large stormwater lagoon. And again, to give you a sense of scale, this lagoon is 20 to 25 acres. It's currently holding clean stormwater, rainwater essentially. And it's got a lot of straight edges, right? Nature abhors straight edges. We want to take this system, this 20 to 25 acre system, and create a beautiful wetland. So earlier I mentioned, on some sites we can repair, others we can restore. This is really a replacement site where we're taking this man-made feature and turning it into something that we think everyone will be proud of, this wonderful created wetland providing a wide variety of ecological habitats and opportunities for humans to experience nature.
Right. And just as a point of reference, we're using the exact same background that you just saw as an existing condition, and we're superimposing the vision around the ecological center on the image that you're looking at. So this center, this environmental zone, is composed of a number of activities or a number of design objectives. As I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, the entire park is threaded with a series of connectivity paths and trail paths, and that you can see that it's pretty evident in the image that you're looking at in the environmental center. The wetlands become the protagonist, the main destination. And as you see, we've meandered these paths so that you can actually experience the ecotones that John was describing earlier, a relationship between the water and land. We also have to the eastern side of the image a restored grassland, which complements very beautifully the wetland and the grassland itself. But also a huge component is the actual environmental center. And this has now becoming, or the way that we see it, is a major destination for park users. In the environmental center, you'll find opportunities to learn about the environment of the entirety of the park, not just the wetlands area, but the whole park. And with that, we've created a series of public amenities such as an amphitheater, places to land, an entry plaza, outdoor opportunities to create outdoor recreation possibilities for students and for the community nearby.
So in a moment, Nadine can talk more about the actual environmental center and what it will offer to the community. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the ecology that we're creating at the site. Again, we're moving away from straight lines, creating edges between wet meadows and open water, ponded areas, edges between the intermittent stream and the meadows, edges between wetlands and grasslands and forested areas. And we envision that these edges, the open water, the bubbling brook, the stream that will flow through here, as well as the ponded area and wetland areas, will attract a wide variety of wildlife, reptiles, amphibians, wading birds such as a great blue heron. And a common theme you're going to hear tonight is that the plantings that we envision placing on the site will include a wide variety of pollinating plants, things like the butterfly bush, sweet pepper bush, as well as forage meals for wildlife, things like high bush blueberry and other fruit-bearing native plants, shrubs, grassy species, and so on. So again, this showcase, I think this will be a real showcase for the site, this wetland area, in terms of viewing and experiencing nature and wildlife. Gonzalo showed an area of grasslands adjacent to the wetland. This is kind of what it looks like now. It's dozens of acres of habitat along these lines, where you can see some pitch pines, some open sandy areas, some grasslands, and I see a lot of opportunity, right, in terms of ecological restoration opportunity.
So in this same area, as you see, switch between images, what we've carefully designed or envisioned for the time being is the entry sequence to the environmental center. How do you actually approach the site? There's a lot of existing topography on site around the basin, for example, and we're actually leveraging a lot of that topography to install the environmental center and then carefully place these other public amenities, such as the amphitheater, and some of those trails that border the wetland. Again, just so you can have a sense of how everything works as a collective, we have the wetlands on the right side of the page, and as you move along into the left side of the page, you will see how the amphitheater and stage, the entry plaza, the trails, and also back into the grasslands create this unison of elements for people to experience.
And this area will provide a wide variety of what we're calling rotational habitats. So earlier I talked about the concept of repairing, restoring, and even replacing. This becomes more of a repair or restore area where perhaps we need to enhance the soil somewhat in terms of nutrient value. There certainly will be plantings. But the concept of rotational habitats also captures the variety of habitats that one might occur in the pinelands. When we think of transitions, we have a wetland transition and we have this grassland transition. A little bit later we'll talk more about rotational habitats, but this area of grasslands adjacent to the wetland will provide habitat for birds like the northern harrier, a state-threatened species. They love hunting and foraging over these areas. Pollinator habitat again, and looking to replace what's there currently with native flora such as the sweet fern or bayberry and other shrubby and herbaceous material in this area.
So here's we have been walking you closer and closer into the environmental center. We started with a very sort of overview, large aerial view of the site. We talked a little bit about the arrival sequence, and now we're at the center. And what we have in front of us is an incredible opportunity of activity, right? What we have on the right of the image is basically the center itself, which I'm excited to have Nadine share all of the ideas that she has for the architecture on that center. In front of the center, we have a flexible space for gathering of sorts, different kind of community activities and activities associated with the center itself. Right at the center of this composite series of elements, we have a pollinator garden, which then presents an opportunity to learn about the environment. As you see, if you squint your eye a little bit, and I'm glad that the presentation will be available for you to meander it a little bit more closely, but there's an emphasis in placing a lot of environmental signage throughout the park. Each of these landscapes tell a different story, and it's really important to tell that story and to learn about the environment because they are very distinctive to one another. But really, another thing that we're really excited about, and I think I've mentioned it a couple of times before, is this amphitheater and staging area. There will be an emphasis to provide ADA accessibility or universal access in wherever possible on the site. We want everyone to have the same level of opportunity to experience all of the important features that we're envisioning for Toms River Park. So if I can explain it for just 2 seconds, the amphitheater, the way it works is that there's a series of seating stairs that are interconnected with a ramp that allows people to very carefully and very safely get down to the stage without any difficulty.
So almost a series of switchbacks.
That's right.
Well, thanks, Gonzalo. I think I take it from here. So what I want to do is take you through our vision and really first ideas for the Environmental Center, which you've just heard about, and you saw where it's situated and how it is built into the topography of this surrounding landscape. And what I want to start is start with this image that really shows in a very simple graphic the 3 key guiding principles that form for us the vision for the Environmental Center and its immediate surroundings. So the 3 principles are sustainability, human wellness, and ecology. And these 3 principles together serve as the foundation for engaging with the community through educational programming and access to nature. Our main goal here really is, following these 3 principles, is to design responsibly for a better future, both for people and the planet, and that's really something that we strive for in all of our projects. Throughout our design process, we're focusing on using the toolbox for what is called high-performance design. That's a holistic approach in placing people's well-being at the forefront of design and really assuring also a highly energy-efficient building. This holistic approach also includes incorporating environmental design strategies such as energy conserving measures, water conservation strategies, improving indoor air quality and providing optimum daylight, and also, of course, choosing natural and healthy materials. We're also exploring a range of other strategies, some of which you've seen in the previous images, such as green roofs and solar photovoltaics, for example. The goal ultimately is for us to deliver a building that has a positive impact on our environment and one that benefits the community as a whole as well. Now, before we even start the design process, and we're just at the beginning of the design stages, before implementing these strategies, we really want to take the time to thoroughly explore the possibilities for the programming and what to use the center for. And that's where we really need your assistance here with the mentioned survey that we heard about earlier, and it's live as far as I understand, to make sure that the Environmental Center reflects your ideas. So please take a moment to review the survey and really let us know your preferences. Your feedback is really valuable for us as planners in the process to shape the future of the center. So thinking about the programming, and given that the Environmental Center aims to be a location where year-round public, educational, and community programs would be hosted, our first questions that also are reflected in the survey are: who are the users, and what spaces do they want to use, and who is a regular visitor frequently coming to the education center, and who comes just occasionally. And by identifying who will use the center and for what purpose we can make informed choices to really best design the building. So just running through those questions, looking at the top row of the images here, we envision planning for spaces that can host open and recurring programs for school-age children, such as field trips with their educators, teachers, for example, as well as programs that would involve volunteers and staff that would support the center's operations. We also envision diverse programs for families and other occasional visitors, ranging from weekend events and nature activities to programs that are focused on science and the arts. As for the spaces themselves, as we're looking at the bottom row of the images here, we envision those spaces to be flexible the way they're designed so that they can really accommodate various types of programming that allows using one space in many different ways. And we think that the spaces should be comfortable for all and universally accessible. And with our goal to create really an optimal learning environment here with this project, we want to create very strong visual connections from the interior to the surrounding landscape through views, and in reverse also provide ample daylight for the interior spaces, as you can see on the lower left reference image that shows a classroom type of setting. Besides the classroom type of setting, that can also be used as an all-purpose gathering space. We do propose to create one flexible space in the building where educational exhibitions that are focused on environmental and ecological themes, like Gonzalo said earlier, can be hosted, so similar to the image that you see in the middle. And these exhibitions would really aim to deliver educational value while also promoting a wider understanding of our natural surrounding and world. In addition to these program spaces, the classroom type space, the gathering space, and the exhibition space, we also would, of course, provide spaces for administrative support and bathrooms, of course. And looking at the lower right image, the idea for us is also to extend the learning space experience to the exterior by providing sheltered areas along the walking trails, and those spaces can be used as outdoor classrooms, as gathering spaces for groups for picnicking, or as performance space, and like Gonzalo mentioned, maybe as a stage to really set the performance opportunities outside the center as well. So bringing this image back again for a minute, just adding the program vignettes that we just saw, to show the proposed blend of this programming at and around the Environmental Center. And it really offers us, at this point, a glimpse into the vibrant activities associated with the program that we envision here, set against the backdrop of a state-of-the-art environmental education center and surrounded by the thoughtfully restored wetland areas and pollinator habitats that we heard about. And to tie it all together, showing this image again, you really see the network of accessible trails that connects the Environmental Education Center with the park's abundant passive recreational opportunities, making the center really coming together with nature and education inside and outside, becoming for what we hope to be an immersive experience. So in summary, with the focus on sustainability, human wellness, and ecology, we really propose a design here that creates a space that not only promotes education and engages with the community, but that also serves as a beacon of environmental stewardship and responsibility for the future. And again, we hope we get feedback from you on this first proposal and this first idea. And with that, I'm handing it back to John and Gonzalo to walk through the next area.
Well, thank you, Nadine, for walking us through that exciting portion of the site. As we move from the wetlands through the dry grass pollinator garden area further away, we get into a portion of the site that looks a lot like this. So it's piney woodlands, it's grasslands, it's pollinator habitat currently, but we see opportunity to enhance it. I've mentioned previously the concept of rotational habitat enhancement. I'd like to talk about that a little bit more in a moment, what we mean when we say that. But first, Gonzalo, why don't you share with us what you see in terms of human use of this area?
Yeah, thank you, John. So, this is yet another opportunity that we get to showcase a completely different environment. And if you can kind of follow along, the vision for the park is the entirety is connected through this series of trails and walkways. Something really important to highlight is that, every now and then we'll find opportunities to place up places for people to sit, benches and things of that nature. We want you to have a great experience as you learn about these landscapes. What we have with the pollinator habitats, which is, I work with John as an ecologist, I'm a designer, and so we kind of exchange ideas about how to put together a composite that works very well from the perspective of ecology and also human use. But we're also, these meandering paths, if you think about it as you look at the image, we're carefully crafting, or we intend to carefully craft view sheds. It's really important that as you move through the park, you really get a sense of how the landscape is changing and evolving in front of you. So these meandering things are really, really intentional. And as we have done, and we will continue to do throughout the park, you will get an opportunity to learn very specifically what the ecologies are all about here, with the introduction, again, of environmental signage throughout.
So these renderings really capture a vision of the habitat that we intend to create and enhance at this site that really represents the unique and beautiful Pinelands ecosystem. One of the characteristics of this area is naturally occurring low acid, low nutrient soils. There may be times where we need to enhance these soils a little bit, but our goal, again, in this portion of the site is this rotational habitat concept. There are a surprising variety of habitats in the Pinelands, as I mentioned earlier, ranging from the classic pitch pine scrub oaks through savannas and meadows. And each of these habitats, to a certain extent, is dependent upon disturbance. So we intend to manage this portion of the site using disturbance, using conventional landscape techniques, so that a grassland may, as it grows up, rotate into something a little more mature, a scrubby area. That scrubby area may eventually mature into a pitch pine scrub oak forest, and then over time and decades can transition back to a grassland through management techniques. By doing so, this will attract a wide variety of wildlife, everything from birds like the kestrel and other state listed species, birds that love living on the edge like the rufous-sided towhee. We'll be focusing again on pollinators. Monarch butterflies are currently actually on the watch list federally, so there'll be a focus on enhancing habitat for monarch butterflies. But we view these rotational habitats as just a key part of the restoration ecology at the site. Further to the north, up in the upper corner of this pink area, we have another opportunity that I think is also one of the most exciting portions of the site. This is an area to create new grasslands, large open areas, and also to play with the topography at the site a little bit. The Toms River site is relatively flat, but one of the highest elevations we see on the site is in this portion of the property. It's about elevation 60, and you're looking from that high point, from that high elevation point, down across this lovely valley that's currently has some bare soil, some grasses, some piney areas. And we see opportunity, given the scale of this portion of the site, to create some really unique grassland habitats.
So because this place sits in a very sort of a slightly higher in topography across the site, we really think that this is an opportunity to actually watch this landscape evolve over time. Some of the things that we have been discussing is how the grasses will change in color, for example, depending on the season, and what kinds of habitats we'll bring throughout the year. We're also thinking that for this particular zone, we want to be more strategic about how to provide access to the zone. And by that we mean by proposing a series of architectural follies or architectural moments, in this case an observation platform, that allows people to engage with this landscape, but as an observant of this landscape, as someone who is looking at how it evolves and not necessarily touches or connects a whole lot with it. These platforms come with a number of design elements. We want to make sure that universal access, of course, is provided, but even within the observation platform itself, we can play with a little bit of topography by creating sub-levels for the platform. Along everything else, it's really important that we provide that element of education to this particular landscape, and obviously there's an environmental signage to get to that, but also places for sitting within this platform. We actually see, every so often as you walk through the park, through the meandering trails and paths, places of destination, and this can serve as one of those.
So you may wonder why we're focused on grasslands here. And part of the reason is that in this portion of New Jersey, and frankly in the Northeast, grasslands are almost an endangered habitat. If you think about it, historically we had far more grasslands. In pre-colonial times, indigenous peoples would burn grasslands to drive game, to enhance blueberry crop production. Lightning strikes, uncontrolled lightning strikes would also burn and result in these lovely grasslands. In colonial times, agricultural practices likewise retain grasslands. Today, however, due to development pressures and successional pressures, grassland species are in decline and grassland habitat is in decline. So this portion of the site provides us a wonderful opportunity to create a large grassland. We've worked with state ecologists and ornithological experts to better understand the needs of the state-threatened grasshopper sparrow, for instance, which needs up to 25 acres to really survive and thrive. We have potential for 25 acres of grassland here. Birds like the kestrel that I mentioned earlier, meadowlarks, a variety of birds of prey love these grasslands. We see opportunity to partner with the New Jersey Blueberry Society, as is currently being done at the site, but in a much more expanded fashion. And the vegetation that underlays all of this, the grassland vegetation, it just changes with the seasons from little blue stem grasses and other native grasses that are green with a blue hue in the summer through this lovely golden hue in the fall. So again, just a wonderful area to observe nature, to experience accessible nature through the platforms that Gonzalo has been describing, and to really have this high perspective over this grassland valley.
So remember when we first started the presentation, we talked about 4 zones. So we're talking now about the second zone. We're about to walk you through another very exciting zone, which is the riverfront ecology. In this zone, we have 2 distinctive set of experiences. We have the Winding River Park connection, which we are envisioning in the form of a pedestrian bridge and a few amenities in and around that connection. And to the north of that, we have a floodplain and wetland enhancement. Something very quickly to note is that, Toms River, like its name, has never really had that much connection or human connection to the water. And I think that we think that there's a lot of opportunities to bring that interaction to play a little bit whenever possible, whenever safe. So we're excited about telling you guys about those ideas.
And, to Gonzalo's point, there are over 2 miles of bordering land to the Toms River on the site. The river runs through the site for over 2 miles. Much of that is really functioning well. So in this case, we have a floodplain forest adjacent to Toms River. If you recall what I suggested earlier, that there are some areas of the site that might need repairing, this would be one of those areas. You can see a roadway through the middle of it. That roadway actually starves the wetlands, starves the floodplain from the river itself. And so we have some ideas how to restore that connectivity between the floodplain and the river while opening it up for people to enjoy nature and experience wildness.
Right. And as John mentioned, what we mean by restoring, we also mean by actually creating a few moments to clear view sheds and to provide special moments of destination, like we've been talking about. You're looking at another viewing platform that is actually nested within the trail. This is not something that you gotta get off the trail and then engage with, but it's something that actually happens along the way, creating a destination that is very seamless through the larger network of circulation. But the important thing here is, again, like in every component across the park, this is a very different environment and a very different landscape. We see that connectivity to the water. Actually, we experience a forested wetland and the habitat that comes with it. We have proximity to water for the first time, and we're really excited about that. In similar nature, with the previous landscape, where we talked about the installation of a few platforms, we see that same opportunity here. Can you imagine actually float over some wetlands? The opportunity to feel like you're actually walking on a boardwalk whenever possible. And here are some, I mean, these are some vignettes, or at least the beginnings of ideas that we're putting together as a team. And we look forward to you and your feedback as to where they might happen or where they might be more strategic.
And these platforms, again, they don't just bring people into the wildness to experience the Toms River and the Toms River floodplain, but they allow the ebb and flow of floodplain waters beneath them, so that once again we're connecting the river to its historic floodplain. And by doing so, we're creating and enhancing a wide variety of forested habitats, from this lovely sort of mature black gum, sweet gum, red maple forest to pockets of buttonbush and other shrubby materials, and of course wonderful opportunities to view wildlife such as state listed birds, black-crowned night herons, a variety of different songbirds. We envision this park to be really used by birders and people with ornithological interests, and I think areas like this where we're bringing people down into the floodplain to observe native and migratory birds are really cool. I think they're very exciting. If we continue in this blue area through the Winding River Park connection, we have some ideas how, if you go back to where Gonzalo started, to kind of enhance the connectivity, not just to within the Toms River property, but to the broader landscape. Right. And so this is just a shot of the Toms River sort of to the south of the site, and we have some ideas in terms of connectivity.
Yeah, and so that it's a pretty straightforward pedestrian bridge. We're thinking about providing this amenity along with a few places of resting, like benches and things of that nature. What we like about this idea is that you're going to, for the first time, have the ability to float over Toms River. With the bridge into itself is a destination, and that's how we see it. There's that sort of natural ecotone that will occur with the wetland ecology along the floodplains, as John was describing earlier. We want you to experience that over time. That it's going to be a completely different environment in the summer than it will be in winter, and that is something that it's pretty unique that we haven't had experience on the site as of yet.
And we envision this as a walk through sort of a drier habitat until you get to the footbridge. So walk through an American holly forest, and eventually you get down to the edge of the river with birches and red maples and flowering plants. And I'm a birder. I see this as a wonderful opportunity to get out on that bridge, around the bridge, experience these edge effects, the forest river habitat, the wetland river habitat, for migratory birds, wading birds. Again, night herons, I think, should be in an area like this, as well as a wide variety of passerine songbirds and even birds like kingfishers that really specialize in foraging along the river's edge. Gonzalo, would you like to introduce this?
Sure. So moving on to the third zone, we went from the first, second, now onto the third zone. We have a forest restoration, which I think it's almost like a fantastical landscape. Go ahead.
And so, this area right now is really, it needs work. This is a plant that we're showing here called common reed or Phragmites. It's an invasive exotic species. It doesn't really provide much habitat value. It grows as a monoculture, and we see opportunity in this portion of the site to, again, engage in some really interesting ecological restoration activities, and in this portion of the site where we approach the Toms River to even get involved in some Atlantic white cedar restoration.
And here's and yet again a completely different type of landscape, where you actually have a very intensive three-dimensional presence with the white cedar forest. You can actually experience three levels of landscapes. You have an understory of perhaps ferns that happen throughout the forest. You have this sort of mid-level canopy where you can actually see through this environment. It's quite, in my opinion, a magical place. And you will see how it evolves over time with a little bit of deciduous play here and there, but it's going to be predominantly an evergreen setup. And in similar ways, we want to, of course, have opportunities to engage with this wild forested landscape with trails and places for universal access, but also places for you to just relax and enjoy what you're looking at. Because we anticipate that the experience of viewing this landscape is going to be very different than anything else.
You know, and Gonzalo is right. White cedar swamps really are magical. They have this kind of cooling, quiet effect. They provide valuable habitat for plants and animals. They enhance water quality, and they really are lovely. But why are we focusing on white cedars? So once again, we're looking for opportunities to enhance and restore ecology. White cedars, Atlantic white cedar swamps in New Jersey used to cover far more of the state. Historically, close to 125,000 acres of the state was covered with white cedar swamps. Today, less than 20% of that remains, maybe 25,000 acres remain. The New Jersey Forest Service has a very noteworthy white cedar restoration project where they're looking to restore 1,000 acres per year. We look forward to piggybacking with that program. It's a 10-year program. We see a lot of opportunity for us here in the Toms River corridor. And, you know, we're mentioning white cedars up in this corner of the property, but actually as you go along the Toms River corridor on the site, again, 2 miles of riverine corridor, there are pockets of white cedar here and there. So we'll be looking for opportunities throughout the site, throughout the floodplain to enhance white cedar, again, really help to bring back some of those more than 100,000 acres that have disappeared over time. One more thing I'd like to touch on in terms of projects is the rare species at the site. Again, by virtue of scale, we've got these grasslands. We have some very large-scale forested areas. We have a healthy population of the grasshopper sparrows at the site. Again, we see opportunities to enhance the grasslands more so. So I've talked about grasslands earlier, but there are also a number of other organisms at the site that we see opportunity to work with local experts, academics, the state, currently working with Rutgers University already on some of these sites. That they include animals such as the northern pine snake, which is a state threatened species. They have been known to occur at the site. We're currently engaged with an expert to better understand their ecology at the site. We've recently, through those northern pine snake studies, seen box turtles, a state species of special concern. So one of the projects that we will be talking about as we develop the design is less focused on one area, but more everything you've been hearing about today. All 9 of the project areas, and as well as the woodlands, are there opportunities to enhance the habitat, to work with local experts, to conserve, to find the ability to preserve habitat, enhance, and ultimately help some of these state rare and endangered species out. And again, we see the site as very important in terms of their regional ecology. The last area we'd like to talk about, this is referred to as Project 9 in the work plan for those of you who are keeping track, is this solar farm area. It's 130 acres or so, so again, it's of scale. It's also largely built out. But this 130-acre area provides an opportunity to combine renewable energy and, again, important habitat. Pollinator gardens and grasslands are integrated. So if you think about the typical solar field that you might encounter, it often has sort of a monoculture of mown lawn or perhaps gravel or some other ballast. This is a different kind of solar field. We've been engaged since day one working to enhance this area through a wide variety of plantings, seedings, and we're also keeping track of it. We have 2 years of monitoring data so far, and actually as of this fall, we've now encountered 300 species, a few more actually, 318, 309 species of wildflowers and grasses and herbaceous materials growing in this area. We're continuing to monitor the evolution of this important meadow. We're monitoring for invasive species and, of course, managing them and evaluating interactions between the grasshopper sparrows and this important grassland area. We've also recently submitted an application and have had received Wildlife Habitat Council certification. This is a very prestigious certification given for these kinds of restoration projects, and we were delighted to receive that as well. And this area will be fenced. It's a solar array. But around the perimeter of it, we should see great opportunities, again, for observing pollinators, for observing a wide variety of the birds, the grassland birds, and again, the edges as well that it provides with the forests and the drier savanna meadows. So with that, I'd like to turn it back to Loretta.
Thank you, John. I'd like to also thank Nadine and Gonzalo for the thorough walkthrough of the park. I know many of you have had questions on the project timeline, so I wanted to share this with you. We've broken our projects up into 3 project schedules, and we look to complete all 9 of the projects by spring of 2029. First, we have our fast track schedule. These include projects 3, 5, and 9, and these have a more straightforward and definable design and permitting process. Next, we have our typical schedule. These include the ecological portion of project 2, in addition to projects 6 and 8, which have a more complex design and may have a more challenging permitting and implementation processes. Lastly, we have our complex schedule. These include the Environmental Education Center that we discussed, that's associated with project 2, in addition to projects 1, 4, and 7. These have a more challenging design, permitting, and implementation process, and require a longer lead time due to the complexities of these projects. And now that we've gone through a thorough overview and gone into these ecological restoration projects, we want to hear from you. Please continue to text your questions to the number on the screen. Molly, I'll hand it back to you to lead our Q&A.
Thank you, Loretta, and thank you to the whole team. As Loretta just mentioned, we're going to transition now to the Q&A portion of tonight's session. And I know we have provided a lot of information this evening, and like I mentioned at the top of the presentation, you'll be able to find the slides and recording on our website to refer back to if needed. We are eager to hear from you, and I hope that we've said that enough tonight, and we do hear from you in the coming days and weeks as we finalize the designs of these projects. And the opportunities for input do not end today. So if you do have questions or comments in between today and our planned in-person poster session on February 28th, please reach out to us. We have a dedicated email address, which is available on our website. That website is tomsrivernrd.com. And a big thanks to those who have submitted questions to us beforehand. I want to start by acknowledging that we have received a few questions that are unrelated to natural resource damages. And while these are important questions, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to receive your input on how to improve the restoration projects and program that we have just put forward for the Toms River site. So I will now continue with the questions we've received from many people asking if the property is safe for families and individuals to visit, and this will be best answered by Loretta, so I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Molly. As I mentioned during tonight's, in the beginning of tonight's presentation, we have a common goal here of ensuring that the park will be safe and a beneficial asset to the Toms River community. We will ensure that the soils meet current residential cleanup standards, which are the most stringent in the state of New Jersey. Currently, we've collected soil samples in the forested and project parcel areas, and they do not pose a risk to those park visitors. Additionally, groundwater will continue to be treated on-site in our treatment facility that will be located in a retained parcel. On average, the groundwater is approximately 25 feet below ground surface. Therefore, it presents no safety issues to the public. The construction of these restoration projects will be done to meet all federal, state, and local requirements, and the site will be safe for all visitors when the Toms River Park is open.
Thank you. And I know you did touch on the timelines for each of these projects. But if you could share a little bit more, Loretta, about when these projects will be open to the public in totality?
Sure. So as I mentioned, all of the restoration projects will be completed by spring of 2029. Prior to the park opening, we do hope to find and transfer ownership of the forested and project parcels, which are the parcels that will be open to the public. We are looking for an appropriate third party, such as a land trust or the like, that would operate and maintain the park. Until such time that we find a third party, park visitors will need to make arrangements with BASF to access the site when the park is open.
Great. And thank you to all who are texting in questions live. I'm just bundling them because we have a lot, which is great to see you're all engaged. And we have a lot coming in asking about the history associated with the former Ciba-Geigy site. And the question here is BASF willing to acknowledge that history at its educational center that we're planning to build?
Thanks, Molly. I understand people would love to share the site history. We do plan to include the site's history as part of the environmental history at the Environmental Education Center once it's open. And in fact, we have been, since 2016, making the site's environmental history part of our educational programs and tours that occur at the site for those that have joined those tours.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on to another live question from Charles. Will there be an entrance fee to access the park? And Loretta, I think this one's for you again.
Sure. There will not be an entrance fee to access any areas of the park once it's open to the public.
Okay, great. Okay. I see a three-part question here, so we will take it piece by piece, team, and thank you for your patience. John, this first question is for you. Could BASF address potential for additional runoff and high temperatures that may be caused from the removal of trees and addition of hard surfaces?
Sure. Thank you very much, Molly. And again, thanks everyone for coming out tonight and joining us. We love the questions, so keep them coming. So, this is a restoration project, and as a result, it's our goal to obviously minimize the number of trees removed unless they're part of the restoration enhancement, for instance, in the grassland area. But ultimately, we're enhancing the ecology. We don't anticipate adding any hard surfaces without removing others. The architectural team has expertise in using materials, hard surface materials that are permeable pavers and the like. But overall, it's our goal to decrease hard surfaces on the site and to improve the ecology, improve the plant community, which ultimately will enhance the water quality, the recharge water quality, and reduce runoff.
Thank you, John.
Sure.
Seems like there's some questions and additional concerns from neighbors, perhaps, asking, will there be additional noise and light pollution from the increase of public access to this site? And will these projects worsen air, aquifer, and water quality? Maybe you could touch on that a little bit, too.
Sure. In terms of air quality, water quality, we think it's quite the opposite. Our ecological projects are planned, they're designed to uplift and restore the ecology of this site, again, of close to 1,000 acres. That's going to only improve air quality and improve water recharge. In terms of the first part of the question, there will be a need for some lighting in portions of the property around the environmental center, perhaps, elsewhere, perhaps, for security requirements, of course. But our goal is not to create any light pollution problems for our neighbors or for ecological receptors. We need to be very conscious of how light pollution might affect nature. So again, our goal here is to design a project that improves air quality, improves water quality, and minimizes light pollution.
Thank you very much, John. And the last part of this question may be best for Loretta. Will there be increased traffic, and how will the public access this new park?
Sure, thanks, Molly. As we mentioned throughout our presentation, we're still in the very preliminary design phase process. Therefore, we'll be completing a traffic analysis to maximize access but minimize traffic issues to the Toms River Park. Our conceptual design currently has the location of the Education Center, and that's off the main access road, Oak Ridge Parkway, and that's where we plan to provide ample parking for park visitors. During this process, there's a permitting process that will include an opportunity for public comment, and any early community feedback will be very helpful for us in this topic, so feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or concerns about that.
Great. And I see in the live texting capability a lot of questions about what the main access road will be. So just to reiterate what Loretta just said, the Oak Ridge Parkway is where we plan the main access to be. So thank you. I know you said that, but just lots of questions on that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Moving along, we have a question from Tim W., who asks about the grasslands and pollinator habitats, asking if they could attract some interesting birds. And John, I know you addressed this throughout our presentation tonight. Maybe you could answer, are those areas being planned with birds in mind, and will the park be open to bird watching groups?
Absolutely, yes, yeah. We're interested in attracting a wide variety of wildlife, and of course we're in part focusing on birds, including the grassland species that I've mentioned, kestrels, harriers, and of course the grasshopper sparrow. But we also want to provide high-value opportunities for people to experience nature while not interfering with the wildlife. In an inclusive and accessible manner. Gonzalo earlier talked about ADA and beyond accessibility. We're early in the design, but we're exploring opportunities to create welcoming, inclusive, accessible viewing platforms and bird blind structures where you can see nature, but nature can't see you. The birds just won't have a clear view of you. If you have any structures like that you've seen elsewhere in New Jersey, we welcome your suggestions. If you've experienced accessible bird blinds on other sites, please let us know. We'd love to learn from what's out there. And of course, the educational center that Nadine talked about earlier is going to have a wide variety of indoor and outdoor viewing spaces, as well as meeting spaces that your local bird club could potentially use as a gathering spot. So, good question. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So we received a question from both Will and Tiffany, and thank you for your questions about related to the possibilities for educational programming and what partnerships with local schools might look like and their ability to visit the park. And I can take this one, and I'll start by saying that BASF is really looking forward to the opportunity to work with local schools to provide these educational opportunities for students at the park. We don't have project favorites, but our Environmental Education Center is really one project that has a lot of opportunity to work with the local schools. And we have worked with Toms River and Manchester school systems to support various environmental-based STEM education programs in the past. This includes programs like a deer population study that was conducted by advanced placement high school ecology classes. And we've also worked with Toms River High School's authentic science research students to support a multi-year science investigation on the property. And John was just talking about birds and bird boxes, and I also will add in this answer to this question that BASF currently has 38 bluebird boxes on site, and we are happy to talk about furthering partnerships or creating new ones with local schools to set up class projects, perhaps on bird studies and things like that. For the park in general, and I know we mentioned this in our program overview, our company does plan to partner with universities and environmental groups, and we've started to have those conversations to protect the threatened and endangered species on the site so we can really preserve those key habitats. So we see a lot of educational opportunities to come. Okay. Moving on, Loretta, this may be a question for you. And similarly, there have been questions asking if visitors will have an all-purpose gathering room that they could enjoy in the Meadowlands, a room that maybe can be rented or used by nonprofit organizations for meetings? And similarly, are there any master gardeners in this adjacent Oak Ridge neighborhood? And will they be able to provide input for these green spaces that we're planning?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Molly. So yes, as you probably saw during our presentation, there will be gathering rooms, indoor and outdoor spaces, and that can be utilized for educational or other nature-related programs. And yes, master gardeners are more than welcome to provide input. As we mentioned before, we have our email address, tomservernrd@basf.com. We'll share this also at the end of our presentation, but feel free to contact us or have the master gardeners contact us. And for anyone else who would like to learn more about the spaces that we plan to have at our Environmental Education Center.
Thank you, Loretta. So maybe staying on the Environmental Education Center, Nadine, this is an architectural question that I'll hand over to you. How do we make sure that the building is designed sustainably? And are there quantitative measures that are part of the design to prove it?
It's a good question, and we didn't really have the time to get into that during the presentation, but just to touch on that a little bit, I mean, the short answer is yes, and there are really a lot of aspects, many aspects that need to be considered during the design to really make sure that a building is truly sustainable. And, it all starts with the location, orientation of the building, making sure that, you get sufficient daylight and you really minimize the energy needs for the building. And then there are materials that you choose, the least number of materials that you can control, the better, for example. And, you also want to make sure that you use renewable and natural materials like timber, or there are, newer materials out there, newer materials that are really old materials that are natural materials, like insulation materials made of straw or hemp. And then you have to look at the energy sources, of the energy that you still need. The more clean and also renewable energy sources, the better. And all of these aspects really looked at together will create a holistic, sustainable design. And there are certifications. You can quantify these measures in certifications such as, I think one of the most well-known one probably is called LEED. There's also Passive House that basically collect points for every sustainable measure that you implement. And in the end, there's a tally that basically gives you a certification such as LEED Silver, Gold, Platinum. But there are also calculations that you can do for net zero energy and net zero carbon designs that are more recent and that really take into effect, how much energy you use and how much carbon, how much CO2 you're emitting into the atmosphere with the materials that you use. So all of these things can be considered, and that's all of these things we are considering and want to implement. So, as we are moving forward, we are considering any of these strategies and will quantify to make sure and prove that, the building's not only designed sustainably, but also operates efficiently in the future.
Thank you, Nadine. Maybe a follow-up question for you coming in from Cheryl. When would the Environmental Education Center be open for use?
Yeah, I think it's a kind of similar answer that we heard before, that, the entire, I think, park will open in the spring of 2029, and so will the building and the environmental center. That's our expectation. And it would be open thereafter for use upon request and in accordance with BASF site rules.
Thank you. Staying on the Environmental Education Center, we have another question. A lot of folks who are texting in are asking who would run programs at the Environmental Education Center. And Loretta, maybe I'll hand this one over to you.
Sure. Okay. Thanks, Molly, and thanks for those who are interested in the programming of the Environmental Education Center. So BASF will be looking for partners who can help support the environmental education programming at the park. As Molly mentioned, we've had preliminary discussions with various environmental groups. And we hope to have many partners who can help utilize the space in the future. If you are an interested party or would like to discuss in more detail or would like to, have any interest in supporting these programs, again, feel free to reach out to us at our email address, tomsrivernrd@basf.com.
Thank you, Loretta. Switching gears a bit, we have received several questions related to any plans that we may have on building housing on any of this property. And Loretta, I'll give this one to you as well.
Sure. Thank you. So no, we will not be developing any housing or building any housing on this property. The residential development is prohibited by the settlement agreement for the 1,050 acres, and BASF expects to offer for sale the remaining acres consistent with the township's industrial zoning designation, and that excludes residential uses.
Thank you. Okay. Lots of excitement around future biking and walking trails. We have one question from James M. Saying that I hope you'll be able to incorporate a bike walking trail that will extend the Winding River Park. Gonzalo, I know you spoke about the connectivity earlier. Can you take this one?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and the answer is absolutely. The beauty of the scale of the park that we have in front of us is that it can provide for a lot of different types of trails, and we're definitely, connectivity is an important part of the project. So we'd definitely be able to incorporate that to the Winding River Park.
Thank you.
And Molly, maybe I can add to that. It's, sort of not just the human ecology, but also wildlife. We're working with the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection to look at wildlife connectivity. There's a very interesting program, Connecting Habitat Across New Jersey, Change New Jersey. It's focused on these challenges, and we're reviewing their guidelines and looking to ensure that we have wildlife connectivity as well as human connectivity with the the more regional landscape.
Thank you, John. And
Sure.
Gonzalo. Okay. Moving on to some project-specific questions that I see coming in. Someone's asking, will these projects require lots of excavation and dirt removal? This is from Matt S. John, maybe I can give this to you to answer.
Yeah, I can take this one. As I mentioned earlier, we're conducting soil nutrient surveys as we speak to better understand the soils at the site, the need to amend the soils to support ecological restoration. But, it's important to keep in mind that the soils in the pinelands and in this area are naturally acidic, have low levels of nutrients. So I'm not envisioning any large-scale importation of soils for that purpose. Nonetheless, we anticipate there may be certain areas that require soil amendments or even importation of soil, depending on the restoration objectives. If we go to the created wetland, that's a little bit of a different story. It's possible that wetland complex in the eastern portion of the site will require importing fill. We're looking into various sources now, and if this is the case, and again, we're early in the design, we'll be exploring sustainable options to bring clean fill onto the site in support of this perched wetland ecology. So the answer is large-scale importation of soil, no. Large-scale movement of soil, no. But on a project-by-project basis, we may need to enhance soils or import some soil to support objectives.
Thank you, John. And it sounds like these projects will require many plants, someone writes in.
That sounds like another one for me.
Yep. Where will all these plants come from, John?
So, I've mentioned before, our intent on this project is to repair, to restore, or even as in the case with the created wetland, to replace existing features. And yes, that will require a lot of plants, potentially. In some areas, we expect natural revegetation to occur. In much of the site, though, we'll be looking at direct revegetation. And we have a lot of experience working with local nurseries, local plant suppliers, both Gonzalo and I, to obtain seeds, seedlings, cuttings, potted material to support revegetation. And, one of our goals is to ensure genetic diversity when we obtain these plants. Another key goal is that the plantings will be native to this part of New Jersey. Anything else you'd like to add on that, Gonzalo? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Moving on to the next question from Emons S, asking, will there be a canoe or kayak launch or access to the river? Loretta, can I give that one to you?
Sure.
Thank you.
So as we said before, we're in the preliminary design phase of these projects. So a canoe kayak launch can definitely be considered in the design of these projects. However, if the launch is built, it would not be available for public use while BASF is still the owner of the site. As I mentioned before, we are looking for a partner to transfer ownership of the project parcels and the forested area. So the availability would be the decision of the future site owner.
Thank you, Loretta. Going to tackle a question from Sharon Quilter, who wrote in on the live text, asking if beach butterflies, bees, and pollinator gardens, they currently exist in Ortley Beach. Asking, will we be able to work with them towards a common goal? Yes, Sharon, we would be happy to work together on this common goal of expanding these pollinators, butterflies, and bees and beach life at the Toms River site. Okay. Back to the Environmental Education Center, Nadine. So we have a lot of questions asking how big the Environmental Education Center will be and will there be roof access?
That's a good question. The answer is maybe. But like we heard today, we're in the preliminary design stages, really. And what we're showing today is vision of that future design. And again, we're looking for input from you to really shape that design. And I mean, the architecture design team is considering sustainability measures like the green roof or the rooftop solar panels like you saw. But, you know, of course, we need to do proper calculations and analysis to make sure that these are the right choices. And in that same vein, we would analyze also whether the roof would be accessible and whether that's something that would make sense. And as for the size, you know, similarly, for the Environmental Education Center, that is still being finalized. I mean, we, of course, plan to include all these programmings that we talked about and make sure that they fit into this space. And how big exactly that is, again, it will be determined by kind of finalizing the programming, whether that is, you know, one large gathering space, all-purpose space, or whether that is two classroom spaces. How big is the exhibition space? So these are things that are not finalized yet. But what you saw in the images is kind of gives you a ballpark in terms of scale, what that will feel and look like.
Thank you, Nadine. We have some community members, including Andy Z, asking, where does the energy produced by the solar array go? Loretta, maybe I will hand this over to you.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Molly. So the majority of our energy that's produced by the solar array goes directly to the grid, which is approximately 27 megawatts. Approximately 5 megawatts is allotted to the community, and that's at a discounted rate. And then BASF contracts 1.5 megawatts to run our groundwater treatment system. And to clarify, BASF does not, own or operate the solar fields that are located in the retained parcel. This is done by a third party who specializes in solar energy.
Great, thank you. John, folks are quite excited about the birds that could be coming onto the site. Maybe you could talk about how this project might enhance the migration flight path for birds in the area.
So, you know, much of what we're focusing on is providing nesting and foraging habitat for birds that will actually reside at the site. But you're right, there could be quite a few migrants that come through. You know, the Toms River corridor is a migratory pathway. As we enhance the habitat, as we restore and even replace or create habitat, we'll be looking for opportunities to provide areas for migrants to forage, to rest, to kind of be safe and away from the elements at times. So we're still very early in the design, but we recognize the opportunity for a site of this scale to really provide almost unique opportunity for migrants in the Toms River area. It's just such a large open space. And we'd of course welcome input from the Audubon societies and other bird groups if they have concepts to enhance use of the property by migrants. It's a good question.
Thank you, John. And I think we have time for one more question before we wrap things up and talk about our path forward. One more question. Will BASF fund the maintenance and staffing of the park and environmental education center in perpetuity? And I can tell you that BASF will fund the maintenance until such a time as an appropriate third-party entity is identified, as Loretta was just sharing, to operate and maintain the park moving forward. And with that, Loretta, I'll hand it back to you to wrap up today's session.
Sure. Thank you, Molly, and thank you, everyone, for texting your questions, submitting them beforehand. As Molly stated, if we did not get to them during this time, we will directly email you all with the responses. Again, thank you all for your time and engagement this evening. We really hope this session was informative and made you excited for what's to come at the Toms River Park. As Molly mentioned earlier, this session, or the recording of the session, the slides will be posted on our website. And this is step one of our community engagement opportunities. We really look forward to your feedback and encourage you to take the public survey. It's located on our website at tomsrivernrd.com. On behalf of our entire team, thank you for joining, and we look forward to your input, and we hope to see you at our in-person poster session on February 28th. Thanks again, and have a great night.